People, just say hello to the people out there. This is Singers episode 2. Just give them a wave, people. Give them a wave.
People.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. All right. So shall we tell you who we have on our UK affair? This is amazing. All right, look, so top corner, this side over here on my side. This guy is a person I've just always, he's been a fellow friend, I have to say, and he's been an amazing inspiration. And he just comes from like so many different angles, and he can just straddle and jump across so many different places. I'm just reading his biography, a little bit about his biography at the moment. After signing a lucrative deal with the Premiership team West Ham FC, shortly followed a debut appearance at Anfield against Liverpool FC. So this guy was a footballer. Yeah, he started off as a footballer, but no one would have ever imagined that this professional footballer would ever turn his back on the world of sport and then find his way onto the big stage. Listen, get this. Are you ready for this? Sharing the stage with people like Stevie Wonder, Jocelyn Brown, Aswad, Floetry, and the list goes on. And, you know, even though he shared the stage with these guys, that was not it. You know, this guy is a multi-instrumentalist. I mean, he thinks in different dimensions. He's a producer. He can go back and front in before and after the screen. This guy is literally what he says on the tin. It is amazing to see this guy. I see him as a kind of modern day songwriter, like Lionel Richie type thing. And he can go that way, he can go pop, he can go anywhere. But some people call him simply Gavin Holligan. Give it up for Gavin Holligan. Oh my gosh, people. Give it up, boy. My word.
Thank you.
Amazing. Oh, right. And so, okay, so let me move on. So another person that I've grown up listening to, I can say, listen, live on screen. Yeah. Even though a friend again, but I actually go into the fan world with this guy because I literally am a fan of this guy. This guy is amazing. I mean, his music career spanning 20 years. He's performed with some of the greatest artists in the world, like Incognito, Gloria Estefan, Celine Dion, Janet Jackson, Whitney Houston, Chaka Khan, Sade, Gary Barlow. It just goes on and on and on. I don't have enough words to carry on with these bios. It's ridiculous. And this guy, I have to say, if Samuel Jackson is being named as the actor's actor, this guy here, for me, is the singer's singer. And he has the ability to be able to, when, if the people that are normally just listening, just casual listeners, they are like this, woo! Well, so are the professional singers in his levels and these platforms. They're still doing this because he has the ability to take people to another level and take people on a journey through a song, which is it's a forgotten art in the world of singing as we know it. And we know this guy as Tony Momrelle. Give it up for Tony Momrelle. Yes.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Now I gotta say, I've read out resumes for these guys or bios and stuff like this, but we have a general in our sites, and these guys, I would say, I'll read stuff out because we're, the three of us, we're kind of young in that middle age range. But when you get to this man's stature, you don't read his resume. Can I get an amen? No, we don't.
Amen.
We don't. You don't do it with people like this guy here. So I just simply call him Paul Lee. We tip our hat to the general here, Paul Lee. Give him a round of applause, people.
We do.
Yeah.
My next job is going to be, I'm going to go into ring announcement. in the blue corner.
You represent.
Listen. I joke with that in terms of not reading out resumes. Paul Lee, and I'll just go to you for me. You're one of these people that have paved the way for people like us. You're one of those people that have set a standard where we all look up to in our UK world. So it is really an absolute pleasure, as it is with these other guys, Tony and Gavin. It's such an amazing pleasure to have you on the show, sharing knowledge and wisdom and jokes. Jokes, yeah. Oh, dear. So listen, I'm gonna just throw this first question out to everybody. Really, whoever wants to answer, please feel free to jump in. The journey to being a vocalist. Could you recreate? And I said this on my last show. Could you recreate this journey that you've been on to get to this place in time? If you went back to the past, if you got in your DeLorean and you went back to yourself, to your younger Marty, could you actually recreate this journey? Who wants to answer that first?
Well, seeing as the general's here and he's a bit older than us, I'm going to pass it over to you, Paul.
Oh man, that's hard going. Firstly, I don't think that there's anything that I would do differently.
Okay.
I've been very fortunate. I've been very blessed to have been in some of the best and greatest circles. I'm one of those people who don't necessarily promote my craft per se.
Okay.
I'm very fortunate and to have come through a route that started off at the very, very basics in church, and the rudiments of that have taken me through an incredible journey to where I am now, and
Right.
I give thanks and praise for that to God for that journey. Now, that journey itself has had pitfalls.
Yeah.
There's some real highs and some really, really lows. But I don't think I could recreate that. I don't think there's any one thing that I could personally do that would be able to recreate that. I'm just very, very fortunate and very, very blessed to have been through the sort of route that takes you through there. But that route has really been from the very, very basics and going through the rudiments of music, going through the rudiments of church, the promotions through church from the very basic kindergarten through junior, through early teens, through youth,
Right.
through adults. All of that journey has been for me in the church circle.
Right. Right.
And you know, like a tree with branches, it's allowed me to branch out to do a great many things. But me
Right.
personally, I don't know about the other guys, but I can't actually say that there's anything that I could go back and recreate, because all of that has just been a blessing from God.
Anyone else want to add to that?
You know what the thing is that the reason why I passed it over to the general, because I was going to say exactly the same thing. Because
Right.
to
Right.
be honest with you, there isn't anything that I would go back in time and say that I would change. And for me, when I grew up in church, I was mesmerized by a lot of things,
Yeah.
down to the articulation of whoever was preaching a sermon, down to
Right.
the musical aspect of it, the praise, the worship. There's so many things that grounded me. And then, before I started singing, I was a hip hop artist.
Right. I didn't
And,
know that.
for me, I grew up in the mid 80s where the world of hip hop came and consumed the UK by storm. It hit the UK by storm. It wasn't
Right.
just the
Right.
music, it was b-boying and the whole culture of it all. Singing
Yeah.
came later, but when I got into the relationship with singing,
Yeah.
and being in the UK, as we all know, when we started to do sessions, Jordan, when we did sessions back in the day,
Yeah.
in order to facilitate some of these things, we had to be adaptable,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Sure.
sing in different styles. So what I'm trying to say is that because I've gone through that journey of experiencing different things, I wouldn't change it because it's added so much
Sure.
growth and depth to who I am as an artist. And I'm just grateful for all of those journeys. So I don't think I would change anything. If I got in my DeLorean and went back to 1985, I'll just be like, leave it as it is.
You'll be back. You'll be back to your younger self. Like, you're doing all right, kid.
Yeah,
Just keep going.
doing well.
Just keep going. Gavs.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about how I sort of transitioned from obviously playing football into music.
Yeah. Your story's a lot different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not disconnected, but there's definitely like a whole nother world that I've obviously been a part of, and then left
Yeah.
that world to embrace another world, which was equally as passionate. I was equally as
Sure.
passionate about. But at the time, I wasn't transitioning as a vocalist or an artist, more importantly. I was kind of doing the session thing for ages. And then I got fed up of writing with or 4 people, and then the stuff's sitting on the hard drive. So I
Right, right.
start thinking, just going to do it myself.
Yeah.
Going to have a go. People like my dad always used to tell me, you know what, you've got something in your voice. And I'm like,
Interesting.
but later on in life, I realized he was right. He had a point. So I thought I'd explore it a bit more.
Yeah.
That journey took me on a whole nother exploration process. And, you know, I literally got my behind kicked because it's not a kind industry. But somewhere I was convinced I have something to say and I have something to give. So I pursued it. And here I am still bashing away at it. But I wouldn't change anything. I don't think, no, I'm with the other 2 gentlemen. I'm kind of happy with the way things have evolved and shaping. You know, it's kind of like what it should be.
Yeah. And just to add to what you're saying and connect Paul's sentiment too, there's something about pushy dads, because I think I can agree with you. I mean, it's so funny because once upon a time, you and I were in a studio. We was in my studio, and it was our dads that were around us, and they
Yeah,
were
that's
pushing.
right.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a strange room. Me, you, Emily was there. Who else was there? Is that it? Was that it? And
Grace, I'm sure.
and Grace, yeah. We had pushy dads. So when sometimes we was like, I'm not sure if we got something. Your dad and my dad were like, no, you better push. You better push. You're gonna. Yeah, he was a person that pushed you into your thing. And you know, my dad was right. He was right with bringing that stuff, because otherwise maybe things weren't so clear. Maybe I would have. So I wouldn't change stuff that happened in that respect. Paul, you made an interesting point regarding the church scene. Although that between the connection of all of us, the church music education scene, as it were, is a very ethereal thing. No pun in that. In terms of it doesn't have any form. Hence why.
No.
Go on.
I mean, one of the points I've been thinking about since you asked the question was the exposure to a tremendous amount. I grew up in a conservative church. Every single kid went to piano lessons. That was the roots, because you were going to give your time to church, and how you did that was through music and whatever. My mother, at my earliest recollection, used to take me to classical recitals at the Wigmore Hall and the Royal Festival Hall. And I remember hearing an orchestra and my head tingling with the sound and the structure of all of that. And so you grow up with all of that. My mother sang in the church choir. My father was a tenor soloist at church. And so we would naturally follow in the area of music. But the appreciation and the different genres of music that I learned through church to appreciate, it wasn't just one, it was a great many. So those things have taken me to a tour with as a singer for Jesse Norman. I toured with Jesse Norman and doing that classically, and then, you know, being able to perform live with Stevie Wonder and things like that. It was just some of the most amazing things ever. But you know that.
Sorry, can we just pause for a minute? You just said you performed live with Stevie Wonder. Is that what you just said?
Yes.
Okay. Just taking a moment there, because you can't just roll that off and just say, oh yeah, you know,
Well,
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No.
Yeah. No, back in the 80s, I conducted a choir for him in his European tour. So we did performances at the NEC and at Wembley Arena, and I was responsible for putting the choir together and conducting the choir and whatever. So those are really, really good days. But it all stems from my appreciation of music and my education of music from my parents. And so I've learned through church to appreciate so much. And so that's, for me, that was the route that brought me to where I am today.
Wow. just a little footnote. While you was conducting in Wembley Stadium, I was in one of the highest seats, about 13, 14 years old, watching this and being my head just exploding when realizing the person I've been listening to for ages, seeing them in the flesh live, and that's when one of my vocal journeys started. When I saw Stevie Wonder live, my life was never the same again. After that, it was.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, all of you guys have that same experience on that platform. Tell me how, on that head tingling sensation moment, who remembers the time when they were like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do. Has anyone got that experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, when I was in my late teens, I started singing when I was about 18, 19.
Mhm.
And I remember listening to the Winans, someone giving me an album of the Winans, and that was it. I was just completely like on the Winans. Nothing could compare. And I would have flat out arguments with people. And I was young at that time, you know, just became Christian. I was young at the time. And I remember someone saying, listen, you need to come and see this group called Commission.
Oh dear.
And you're going to change your mind. And I had a big argument with these people. I remember this back at church, and I was like, you don't even know what you're talking about. I'm telling you, Live at Carnegie Hall is the best album ever. So I was quoting everything, you know, and they went, that's great. Fans are great, and trust me, they are great. But I think you're going to be interested in seeing Commission. So there was a brother that bought me a ticket and took me to the Royal Festival Halls, and I saw Commission, and I saw Fred Hammond, and then I heard him sing Running Back to You. And that completely broke me. And no one had done that. And that was at that moment, it was like, this is what I want to do. Now, my family always knew that I was going to be in the entertainment world. But it just became a thing of like, moment of clarity was it, that spine tingling, like that is not just singing, there's something, that's what I want to do. And that's what I feel connected to. So that was it.
Yeah, I can definitely say, and I don't know about you, when you connect with that. I remember being in that Wembley Stadium gig, and Stevie Wonder was under the like in an enclosure. You couldn't hear him, you couldn't see him, but he started singing. And you got to understand, after listening, well, you guys know this, after listening to someone for such a long time, remember the technology we were in, tape recorder, no rewind button, just forward. And after listening to someone for such a long time and being like indoctrinated with their tone, their stuff, then when you hear them and they come out live, and I just remember when I heard him go, since the day, na 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 na, and I just remember tears. When I say tears, Gavin, Tony, Paul, I just remember tears, and I went into a fit, like them girls when they saw the Beatles. I just went into a fit. And I went, and I remember my action. I went, yes! Tears were just coming down my face, and I can't. It was like a deliverance session. I don't know what happened, man. It was like, for those of you who don't understand, when we're in church and you get a connection, it just felt like that. And it's one thing for it to connect with your ears and stuff, but when it connects with the whole of your body, I wonder how people feel. You know, when people come up to you at the end of a gig and they say, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing," and they're doing the same crying thing, and you're like, "What a privilege! What a privilege to be able to do that for someone." And I use the word "for" rather than "to," because that's a dangerous path. Do that for someone. That is amazing for me. Anyone can add to that?
Yeah, I mean, again, because of my my split childhood, I didn't go to any of those gigs.
Oh wow.
They came a lot later. So I was making people cry for scoring, you see.
Oh, all right,
early,
all right.
from early. You know, the last 5 minutes,
For sure.
and bang, go, Gavin Holligan again.
Yeah, the whole stadium. Yeah, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's the same vibe, man.
Yeah, same vibe.
Yeah.
So I think it was a lot later that I started realizing just the potency that music carries. It was a lot later. I'd always, because around music, I was playing piano since I was 3 or so. So it's always been a part of my world anyway. But you just realize this thing goes deep, like,
Oh yeah.
that's really deep. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, I guess mine is a bit different.
You know, and it's funny knowing the impact. I think the reason why I had such an emotional connection with this, you know, prior to me understanding what this power of the voice is, you know, I had in my childhood, I had a really bad speech problem. I couldn't connect with people because I was like, can you help? Couldn't get the words out and stuff like that. And all of my friends were connecting with other people in a real way. You know, guys could get girlfriends and all that sort of stuff. And I was this misfit that didn't know where he was. And as soon as I could connect with a voice type of a place where I could say, oh, I think I found something that I would like to be. And maybe it's the same for you. You know, when Stevie Wonder has to be single-handedly one of the biggest vocal influences on my life, all to the point where I was like, I used to stand like him. I used to hold the mic like him. You know, heck, I actually wished once when I was a kid, I was like, I wish I couldn't see, so I could actually just be. No, it's this
That's
thing
brilliant.
this thing went deep. I was like, if I couldn't see, then I could see what he could see. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it really took over that. And I don't know if you ever had the experience in your life where you've mimicked something so hard because you were still trying to find your identity. I was a boy with a voice that was going up and down, couldn't find the range because, you know, voice breaking and stuff like that. You got all of that on top of stuttering and stammering, and it was, listen, it was tough, man. It was tough. Anyone can add on to that? Can anyone add to that?
Yeah, I think that you know, we're all influenced by so many things in life. And growing up, when I, like I said, when I got into singing, for me, it was I started mimicking Marvin Winans at first because I just fell
Right.
in love with his tone because I was listening to it on a regular basis. What happens is when you do something on a repetitive thing, you start to, you know, it starts to be a part of your DNA, let's say. And
Right. Right.
so that what happened in there. And then when I moved on to the commission thing, again, that particular style of singing, and it was all from Detroit, it started to resonate with me. And I started to listen to more the tone. And then it's funny because it was someone else that brought it to my attention. I can't remember who it was at the time, but they said, listen, you know, like, you must have loads of Stevie Wonder in your collection. And the funny thing was that I did at home. My parents, we had a lot of music in the house. But remember, I came from hip hop. So I
Right.
stopped listening to that kind of stuff years. I was just like into hip hop. So I was getting back into it. And I went, yeah, I do have some Stevie stuff, but they went, but you sound so much like you got a Stevie tone
You're
and
right.
a
Right.
Donny tone. I was like, I didn't even know who Donny Hathaway was at that time. So I was like,
Snap.
really? I like Stevie kind of stuff. But then obviously it was that Detroit thing again of hearing Stevie tone, which influenced commissioned, which influenced all these
Right.
people,
Right.
and that influenced me. And so it's part of that DNA in there, you know?
Yep. Yep.
Interestingly, I actually got to a point in my teens where Stevie Wonder was a huge impression on my life. And I remember just literally going to buy everything that was Stevie Wonder. My good friend, who became my brother-in-law, Bobby Carr, he and I, we went down to Chapels of New Bond Street, and we got hold of Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life songbook. And I remember going back to his house in Elephant and Castle, and we would spend all the entire summer learning all of the how to play everything from that songbook. And so years later, having the opportunity to actually, you know, perform and record with him was just the most ridiculous thing ever. And
Of course.
then Tony was saying about the Winans and the influence of the Winans. And when they came about and broke the mold, from the kind of traditional Hawkins and Crouch. That's
Yeah.
like, whoa, this amazing thing. And then talking about the journey, Levine Hudson was on the scene,
Yeah.
and she was asked to do support for the Whiners at Shaw Theatre.
Right.
That's right.
And I was one of her backing vocalists. It's like, this thing is
That's
surreal.
right. That's right. You know what? That's right. Because, you know, I grew up with Levine. We all came from the same church.
Yeah, yeah,
I felt Kojic. And that's right. That's where I remember first seeing you, man.
and it was the most amazing thing. How did I get there?
Right.
How did I reach it? And you know, I started to realize that, you know, even the map of my life was kind of being ordered, but it wasn't any of my doing. I don't think it was my personal doing. I just believe that, you know, God had sort of mapped out this route for me that allowed me to enjoy all these different genres and styles and be able to make a contribution. It was just the most amazing thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing.
You know, just to add on to what Paul's saying, and it's funny how things come full circle. And what I mean by that is there's a part that's your gift and your talent, and there's another part of your faith in your life. And for me, I believe the same thing, that there was opportunities that I knew that it wasn't just me, you know, and it's all part of my personality and part of what God gave me. But the funny thing is, what I was going to say about the full circle is that growing up, when I started to sing, I just wanted to be in the room. I just wanted to be someone I wanted to learn. I wanted to be that sponge that was like, I'll be quiet. I just wanted to just listen what's going on. And I was just intuitive, listening to stuff.
Yeah.
And so when the session started to come about, and I used to get a lot of calls and stuff like that. And I remember, you know, joining Incognito and touring and stuff like this. The full circle side is the people that influenced me, I now have a relationship with. And this is the weird side of it all. I met with the Whiners, I know them very well. And I met with Commission Crew and Fred, who's someone that I speak to on a regular basis. But these are people that had a major impact on my life. And there was part of it that had to be me being humble, and on that quest to learn and to be as fluid as possible. And here's the funny thing, going back to Stevie Wonder, I was in Japan, and my phone rang about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was thinking, who's calling me at that time? I'll answer the phone, and it was Stevie on the phone, calling me up to say that he's a massive fan of mine. Now listen, what do you say to that, to somebody that you've been listening to? And that's the whole full circle thing. I just wanted to be in the room. I just wanted to just kind of learn and listen. And then I'm through recording, you don't know who's listening to you. So the beauty of that is, I guess, is that I've traveled so many places, and I'm having other celebrities, other people coming up to me saying that they got my music. It's a weird thing, but a humbling experience. And it always gives me that thing about the influence and how, you know, that journey, the trajectory has got us to where we are now, you know?
No,
that's really interesting, because when I was playing for Wickham, I was a footballer. I used to take the journey from, at the time I was living in Streatham, which is where I am now again. I used to drive from Streatham to Wickham, which is an hour and a half. And I remember having the radio sometimes on, and I remember hearing this song by a UK singer, and I'm like, this is wicked. Sounds like Stevie, but more different, more UK. And it was you. It was you were singing on a feature, And I was like, yeah, this is wicked. And then I think we have a mutual friend, Diana. So Diana was like, yeah, my friend's on the radio. And I'm like, okay, cool. And she played the tune. I was like, oh, this is a wicked tune. I was like, this is your friend. It was you.
Wow.
But this is years ago. This is about 18 years ago.
Wow.
It was like a hip hop kind of R&B track.
Okay, yeah.
It was you?
Wow. It was me.
It was you.
That's crazy.
Yeah, man.
I think you're right, Tony. Humility, it does you see, the room is different when you go in. The room is actually different to the people that are humble. Yeah. I
Yeah,
had El Cato, amazing singer. She
yeah,
does
yeah, good
BB.
friend of mine. Yeah,
Yeah, she said she spoke. She said say hi, and she said, there's some rooms that she got into. She's like, how the heck did I get in this room?
yeah,
And I'm like, you know what? You got to understand, if you have a particular vibe about you, some people call it vibe, we call it character, we call it chemistry. When you have those things, your skills will be great, but if you don't have that thing that people need, because the voice is the vehicle, I believe is the vehicle, but the chemistry and the character of what you have is what people need. And I think that script from my favorite book says, that the gift will make room. It will make room. But it's when you get in the room, there's some things that you may not be able to deal with, but you're going to have to learn once you get into that room. So that's
Mm,
why you need to be humble. Because
mm,
if you walk into that room and say, "Oh well, I know what's in that room," then the
yeah,
chances are you're going to just crash, because you're supposed to
yeah,
be in the room to learn the stuff. Do you get what I'm
yeah,
saying? So,
yeah,
there are sessions that, or there's been events that I've done that's been very humbling, because I'm like, all right, I know I'm not supposed to be in this room on paper, but it's been afforded for me to be in that room. So
yeah,
I'm gonna put my big boy pants on, and I'm gonna learn, and I'm
mm.
gonna pay attention, and I'm going to acknowledge who's in the room. And I think, particularly for singers, it's so important. It's so important to have that.
yeah,
Touching on the genre thing, that's quite interesting. I know we've all come from a church education background, music education background. But one of the things that I realized that, especially with the diverse angles that we've all gone to, is that I think in our church music education, there is, I think, somewhat a cross pollinasia of other characteristics that not necessarily go missing, but I think are underplayed when we are moving out into what we are today. So, a lot of our information that we got is predicated on church music. However, like Paul Lee was saying, in terms of going over into the classical world, I know the same. But Tony, for you, is for jazz world. Gavin, it's in a number of different worlds in terms of genre, but also technology in terms of production. Myself, in terms of ethnomusicology. How do we how do we how do we kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? How do you kind of navigate your purpose while still keeping these characteristics in balance? Or do you just kind of let them go as they are and just say, wherever it takes me, it takes me? That's a bit of a wide thing. How do you, as you're going along through life, these influences come, but how do you kind of keep them in check so you can go into the direction you go into?
It's just been where things have taken me to.
Right,
Virtually everything that I've ever done has been by word of mouth.
right,
Um, you've either been recommended, or someone's just called you up because they heard you do something, or it's the most amazing thing. There isn't any one route that has allowed me to do different things. Not one. Everything has just been touched by different things. Growing up from a conservative background, um, the journey of classical music started very early. So,
right,
once I started doing piano lessons, and you go through all of those things through the exams and through the lessons, classical music becomes a part of you.
right.
And then marrying that with church, and in my church there were traditional hymns, so there were
Okay,
SATB parts,
okay,
so you learnt um, all of the different parts that made up, all the voices that made up the
right.
sound.
hmm
So in going through that journey, it's just going to take you into different places. So whether it's jazz, whether it's R&B, whether it's classical, whether it's traditional, you just learnt that you kind of fitted in to all of those pieces. And so people would come out and drag you in,
Mm,
not because even you wanted to, but because they knew you had a knowledge of these things, and they would just kind of pull you in. It's an amazing journey.
And I think it's quite interesting what you, from your musical background, and particularly with SDA, it's more it would more lean to academia side of music, and that had an influence on the sound that an SDA voice type would make. So yeah, I do agree, and it's funny because different environments bring out, especially in this genre of music that we've kind of predicate ourselves on, has come out with different styles. One particular church group would be more academic, another church would be more riff-like, another church would be more hoop and hollering kind of thing. There's almost so many different. Some are more songwriting in aspects. So yeah, I totally agree with that. That makes total sense. Anyone else want to add to that?
I mean, that's a really loaded question, Clint.
I know.
It's so wide. It could take
Yeah.
take a while to really think about what it actually means. But but nonetheless, I mean, when I think about, you know, what music really is to the world, to everybody, like I once heard a statement: music is how feelings sound, and I really relate to that statement, because I think I'm constantly looking for a way to find myself in a sound or a lyric or, you know, a part, a harmony, a rhythm. I'm just always trying to find something that brings me
Articulating.
home. Like it resonates with me. And when I think about like all the things that I've listened to that have really impacted my, you know, my personal emotional space, you know, we're talking from Hans Zimmer right through to Sting,
Sure.
right through to obviously Stevie, right through to, I don't know, Ed Sheeran at times when he brought out
Yep.
that 18 song. It was just like,
Sure.
so, you know, it's I think people are exposed to what they're exposed to. They're either reading something or they're hearing something or
Yep.
they're hanging out with some people or they're watching something and they get informed and they get inspired and they connect with it. And then they want to be a part of that. They want to be able to contribute to that expression, that idea, that feeling. And then the cycle continues, and some go viral and some have hits and become a staple part of a person's listening diet. So it's really hard to know how, you know, what's in, like, what one thing has informed, like, personally my musicality, because sometimes I'm writing and I find myself introducing reggae into the whole thing, and I'm like,
Right.
that wasn't on the brief.
Yeah.
But I make
Yeah.
it work because I understand the premise and some of the principles of composition and production and stuff like that. And no one would ever know that that's what I was probably doing. But it means there's a feeling that's kind of introduced to that track or that song, that piece. And it's been a problem for me, actually. It's been a real problem. I think my eclectic taste has kind of, it's posed a lot of issues with regards to finding an identity that really says this is Gavin Holligan.
For sure.
I'm there now. I'm kind of in that place now, and it's really exciting because I'm working on a body of work, and it's now starting to feel unique and cohesive and authentic. But I just enjoy so many different, you know, strands of music and sound.
You just for me hit the nail on the head, Gavin, in terms of using the word eclectic. I think I know that's pretty much my whole bag, really. You know, I try to, on every recording that I'm doing, if it's for myself or a project, I'm always trying to fit in, but within that genre or style. And, you know, like for me, again, I listened to so much stuff, and growing up, and especially when it comes to songwriting, it was one of the things I wanted to broaden my vocabulary. I wanted to know a lot more than just knowing from, you know, don't forget, we have an arsenal of stuff, doing backing vocals and session work for so many people, listen to variations and styles within gospel music and all these other styles, jazz and so forth. So getting out onto the kind of like the world platform of doing sessions and then being a part of recording sessions and working on projects, it's pulling out all of those tools. But at the same time, I'm on that quest for wanting to expand and wanting to learn. And when you're a creative and you're doing your own thing, and Gavin, you probably feel the same, and yourself, Paul and Clint, is that when it comes to your own material, sometimes you can be your own worst judge, because you've got so many things that make you and if you. And I think that's over a period of time. Like for me, that what Gavin said, I'm now settling into my lane, because there's lots of things, and also we're influenced by the things that we hear, but we're also influenced by the things that we hear from other people, what they think we should be. And so right. I get that. I'm like, well, you should do a song like this, and then it takes just two people to say it, and then I'm now going back to my team going, hey, listen, you know what? People are saying this though. And you know, and then you're like, and there's a part of you that loves doing that too. And because what we do is so exposed, once it's out there, it's out there. So there's that thing of, well, I like doing that, and I like doing that. And so that's why I've spread myself to a degree of different styles of music and projects, so that I can still cater for that, but also that is also a part of me.
Yeah, I think we're opening up these worms that it's gonna just haunt us for the rest of our lives, because you know, eclecticism I think is cousins with schizophrenia, and you know, I'm trying to find my own skin every single day, and I find as quick as I'm trying to find this own skin, I'm shedding at the same time. And you know, if I was left up to my own devices, you know, my album would look like a Jackson Pollock's painting, purely because you know, Jackson Pollock's, for these guys, the ones, the flickering of the paint, because that's my mind, that's what's in my head. And then someone comes along, you know, when I was in my 20s, you know, two record companies came along, said, do you want a 5-album deal, you know, with a little number at the front and a lot of zeros at the end. And I was like, you know, I got so scared, because it meant that if they got me, I'd be contained. And this stuff that I was trying to work out it's my meaning of life. This is life to me. You guys are just voyeurists. You guys are voyeurs. You guys are just like looking in on the inside, if you want to. And I didn't want to be boxed. You know, people say about, you know, getting outside the box. There is no box as far as I'm concerned. And I think part of the journey of, well, we're all singers. We all have elements of songwriting in us, all of us, more than others, and then producers in outrights and all those things. And when the skills are stacked on top of each other, then the thing is even more amplified. So as a singer, I had loads of ideas in my head, and you guys would testify this too. When you was a singer, you was like, I got these ideas, but you need to go and find a songwriter, or you need to find someone or a musician to do it. Then you was like, oh heck, I'm not waiting for anyone. So you start putting stuff down yourself. You start getting good at it as a creative, not as the purest player, but you would shock some players because they thought you was a player. You were just a creative. You just got good at it, and all of a sudden you started to delve into technology. Then you start to put stuff together, and it's just amplified your sphere of whatever you do. And it's just very hard to contain that and measure that and say we're going down that same vein. And I definitely say that it's how to contain this thing, or how to come to that full stop. I will never know. I will never know, to feel that satisfaction of, yeah, this is where I am. I'm not sure if I'll ever find it.
I think I relate to that whole find the skin and shed it. That's such a good analogy.
Oh, let's go into my next song. Don't even bother. Don't you dare.
Hey man, this is already my notes.
You know, Gavin's gonna be like, and I
Copyright it. Just copyright it. Right, they're ready, my
Oh, it's gonna be the one that's quickest to use you in it. Sometimes I find my skin and then I shed it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
Whoa.
dear, man. Influences. Let's talk about influences. We talk about the whole church gospel scene. And what other influences? Just chuck some stuff out there. What do you say you've it's caused an entrench in like a mark in your head? Name me some composers. Name me some singers, some songwriters. Tell me some people.
Mine have been male singers per se.
Right.
Stevie Wonder, of course, has been number one. Donny Hathaway, Peabo Bryson, early George Benson.
All right.
Oof.
And early Michael Jackson.
Oof.
Yeah, of course.
They absolutely. These were the 5 characters that kind of shaped my joy for music. They shaped it for me. Those 5 characters, and growing up in an era where I was allowed. I was allowed.
Tony's trying to take your line, shape my joy.
Right, no,
Yeah, I
come
think
on.
it was actually Clinton.
Ignore what's going on. Don't just go on. Say my joy.
Well, yeah, that was
While I shed my skin.
yeah, they were the ones that shaped it for me. Amazing.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Tony, who would you say?
Very similar actually. Listen to, like I said, Marvin Winans. Then it was Commission Fred Hammond, Donny Hathaway, a great amount. I also love Peabo Bryson and also love Jeffrey Osborne of that era, early Michael Jackson as well. And then, I was listening to quite a few other styles of music, so there were groups out there that were more, let's say, soft country, groups like a group called Lone Star. And that's when I started to really look at the songwriting side of it all and the Nashville form of writing. And so then in terms of writers, I started to check out people like Diane Warren and the versatility of how she writes. There's people like Tommy Sims. I'm just pulling this off the top of my head, but there's probably loads more. But I remember those were major influences for me in my journey of my artistry and wanting to write as well and to sing and having all of those elements. They were massive influence to me because those were the things. And also just, and even though I'm part of with Sade, I always looked at her years ago and thought, you're an industry on your own. I don't know anybody that's doing what you kind of do. It's poetry, kind of music. It's a mixture. It's quite eclectic. 1 minute it would be smooth. In fact, the pop quiz trivia here, the whole term of smooth jazz that was coined when Sade came out with Diamond Life album because they didn't know what to call it.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's how the whole thing of smooth jazz came about. They didn't know what to call it at the time, and she rebelled with her record company because they only wanted to sign her. And she said, no, we come as a package and this is the music. And they said, look, we don't understand this. And the management fought with them and said, look, if this doesn't work, you're done. That album did 10 million albums in America alone.
Wow.
That's the thing. So for me, she was one. I didn't, and again, I worked with her, but before that, I was like, wow, coming from the hip hop side of it all, like she's a writer and also an artist that she's doing her thing. I thought that was really courageous and something, at a young age when she started that she was adamant this is what she wanted to do. So that was quite a big influence to me to see someone just step out on a whim. So anyway, enough of me talking.
No, that's good, man.
I've spoken so much about it, but Paul's gone. He's like, I'm out of there. Forget this, man. Steal my
Oh, Paul's writing the song about shedding my skin.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Boy, it's golden. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I guess I should restrict it to more vocals, because if we're talking about like composition and production,
no, you don't have to, man. You don't have to, because you're a different kettle of fish.
Well, yeah, I mean, I listen to records before I listen to singers, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense.
I really enjoy the story. I really enjoy the journey. I really enjoy the sentiment, the spirit behind it. And then the voice happens to be a vehicle or like a decoration that everything, or maybe not decoration, but the thing that everything's fit around. So like there have been a few records over my childhood and later in my teens and through my 20s and 30s that have kind of really informed my creativity. So definitely I'm with the early George Benson, particularly with the Quincy Give Me the Night album. And then definitely MJ.
Of course.
He can't not get a mention. Definitely, obviously, Songs in the Key of Life, arguably the best record ever made. And only saying arguably to be polite. Definitely Everlasting Life by Kim Burrell, that album.
Oh yeah, it's a game changer. It was a game changer.
Total, like messed up my whole equilibrium completely.
Sure.
I'm actually got massive respect for Asaf Ward, the producer, the guy who made the record. I think he's out of this world. Definitely commissioned, 100% definitely, absolutely.
For
The
sure.
Winans, for sure. Marvin Sapp.
Come on.
Obviously Fred Hammond as well, but I just feel like Marvin has something to say that no one else does. One of my favorite albums ever is an album called A Joyful Celebration, which was Handel's Messiah remake by Quincy Jones.
Soulful Celebration. Yep.
Soulful Celebration.
It's ridiculous. That all hit us, everybody. That hit everybody in the stomach.
Bad.
It was all knocked out.
Still recovering.
No, for real. Yeah. Lick me right in my stomach.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I share, and then later on in time, I started hearing the likes of Norah Jones, the likes of Sting, Jamiroquai,
for sure.
dance as well, and then more from the root side, Bob Marley. Really enjoy his artistry. Really enjoy it. Dido, I'm gonna say, big heavy hitter for me. Really enjoy her. Yeah, just so much. Hans Zimmer, as I said, one of my favorite pieces of life is to listen to the soundtrack that he did for The Last Samurai. There's a track called A Measure of Peace, A Small Measure of Peace, or A Way of Life. Those two. There's a whole movement. I think it's about 40 minutes, and it is. I don't think there's a better way to spend 40 minutes.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, and then more to date, Gregory Porter has really been a big inspiration for me because I find similarities to my tonal balance with his. It's that 200, 300 hertz weight and warmth that just says enough on its own. Doesn't need it too much going on around his vocal. And I found that when I've been recording in the past and kind of building up the layers, the moment far I just lose the balance. It just has to come right back to really minimal elements and really basic kind of construction of instruments. So he's been a massive kind of eye opener and inspiration for me. And there's so many that I could drop. Tony Momrelle,
For sure.
So yeah, we could go on and on. Omar, come on, man, the best by far.
I know. I was waiting for you. I was waiting so I can say it, but yeah, I'm glad you said it now.
Omar's best by far album. It's a lot.
You know this. For me,
Creatives.
yeah, Omar for me has probably had one of the influences in terms of not just as a vocalist, but in terms of portraying a vibe, portraying presence. There are some singers that are amazing, that just can turn the whole place upside down, but don't have any vibe. And then there's some people that can just go and just sing 2 lines, and it's like they've just done a symphony in just their notes, just singing the 2 notes. I believe Omar is that guy. He what gave me a lot of peace, actually. I don't know about you, but did you go through the time where you was trying not to be the person that you was trying to listen to all your life, because everyone was saying you sound like, and you was like, oh man, shut up, I don't sound. And you was like, after about a million hours of mimicking. And Omar for me was like, the guy turned my head upside down in terms of how he put stuff on the page. And through my songwriting life, going through, I was doing neo soul stuff before I even knew what it was, before I even knew the genre existed. So when I was coming out of college now, right? So when I was coming out of college now, everyone was like, "Oh, you're da 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 da." Then D'Angelo's album dropped.
Oh gosh, D'Angelo.
And then I got really frustrated because I was like, I've never heard of this cat, and all of a sudden now everyone's saying that I sound like this cat.
Yeah.
And it, anything that I would put together, it was, oh yeah, that's got a bit of a D'Angelo. I was like, man, listen, different universe. But then I realized, do you know what I'm saying, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
But then afterwards, and I realized that when Omar went over to the States, Omar's like a godfather out there. This guy is like, people are like, no, Omar's the guy. Omar's, everyone tips their hat to Omar. So I was like, yeah, well, this is where I'm from. I'm not from you guys from the States and stuff. Even, I hear that even D'Angelo tips his hat to this guy. They've all listened to that world. So I'm like, for me, I'm like getting my lineage correct. I'm like, no, I'm torn from the Omar's cloth. I'm not torn from D'Angelo or the neo soul movement that came out from the US. And I think for us, I don't know about you, but for me as an identity, being a UK singer, soul, or whatever you want to call it, artist, I got fed up around in that 90s period of being compared to stuff that I didn't listen to, but knowing that we've got our own stuff here. And so when you say, Gavin, one of your favorite singers is Tony, I'm like, yes, because this is like a lineage that we all connect to, we're woven to over this side. Not everything is US. We do have our UK sound. Does anyone kind of concur with that?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Working, like, listening to Omar back in the day, and this is what I say about, for blessed and privileged of what we get to do. And I didn't know how big Omar was. I knew he was big until I was touring the States. And I got to Atlanta and places like that. And the first thing people were doing was, they wanted to ask about Omar. And then it went on to Soul and some other stuff. And they wanted to just know about what was going on in the British market, the British soul, because their minds were like, yeah, you're doing something different from us. And I'm like, okay, break it down. What's different to you? Because I'm an English guy, I'm Caribbean background. Tell me what's different to you. And it was beautiful to hear people say, they would always draw reference to Omar because they said they could hear the Caribbean influence within his music. And I was like, you know what, you are so right. And it just made me appreciate that he did his thing with it, and it has a little bit of a Latin feel to it as well in places. He's got a lot of ideas, and when I speak with him, he's just got ideas churning
for days.
Yeah, so I definitely touch with that and agree with that, man.
Yeah,
I think I actually was speaking with him yesterday, and he's actually, hopefully he's going to be on one of the shows if we can get the schedules coming together. He's going to be putting some of his stories together. I'd love if one of you guys, any of you guys, can come back and listen to this, because I think sometimes it's good we have a cross pollination of people connecting especially in this time. It's a great time to connect. But
Yes.
one of the things I think he is one of those not unsung heroes in the UK, but because we know the way the industry works over this side here, this man should have been something like over there. He should have been up in the stratosphere but instead a lot of the US imports that were coming over were taking precedent over our UK stuff. And so for me, I'm like, I get touchy on this subject, because I'm like, you got to get your lineage right. Our side, what we do, is what we do. And if we had the kind of US backing like they have in that support structure, it would be upside down day. Any one of you guys here
Well,
would
yeah.
be cleaning up on that realm. Paul, you're going to say something?
If I could slightly take issue with that. One of the saddest things for me is knowing that race has played such a huge part in denying the amazing ability of UK musicians and vocalists.
Right.
I don't think, and I hope this does not come across as really bad, it's not meant to, but I don't think Sam Smith can sing better than Tony Momrelle. I think Tony Momrelle has a far better voice than Sam Smith.
Right.
But this man has an Oscar sitting on his mantelpiece, and he owns a very large mansion, and is fated by large record companies and publishing deals and all the rest of it that goes with it. Unfortunately, we are living in a time and an era, and it's just something that's been perpetuated for, I don't know, the last 100 years, maybe, musically, where the skills of people of color has been denied. We've not been given the same platform or the same support or whatever to be able to take the God-given gift that we have to the next level. While there are others, and I'm sure every one of us has a catalogue of people that we could point to and say, well, it's been all about image rather than skill and gift. We have a passion within us that allows us to continue going on and on and on. But yeah, were we given the same platform? I am absolutely certain that Omar would be, 10, 20 times the artist that he is today.
Yeah,
I think.
Sorry.
So no, you go. No, you go, Tony. You go.
What I'm going to say is that you're 100% right, Paul. And the reality is that we live on a small island, okay? And it's only until you travel outside of the UK you realize how small it is.
Yeah,
and back in the day, it was only two major radio stations, Radio 1 and Capital Radio. And so the demographic of people that were listening were predominantly pop listeners. And that was what was popular. And anything that was remotely urban, it would 9 times out of 10 come from our American counterparts. But the difference is, unfortunately, when you look at, because we're a small island, the demographic of people that are from our culture and expanded cultures of ethnicity, it's very small compared to America. It's like America's 370 million people, and the black community alone is around 17 million or 18 million, something like that. It's a lot. So the point I'm trying to say is that they've got enough of an industry to sustain itself. One of the problems that we've had is we've had a lot of independent labels, such as when Omar came out with Nothing Like This. That was all done by their team. And, hitting the pop charts and getting on radio, but the support structure just wasn't there. And they would more be okay to work with their parent label, because EMI, Sony, and so forth, their parent labels are in the States. And so parent label, well, regardless of who's on your roster and who's coming out this week, this artist is coming into town, and you guys need to get him on that station, that TV, that so forth and so forth. So people like ourselves get pushed to the side. Or what would happen is if you did get a record deal, and I know loads of people, that's why I didn't sign. I had a bunch of offers, but I just knew people that were signed to a lot of these major labels where they had the same counterpart for pop, and they were getting 5 times the budget. And for what you're trying to do, and the promotion support, the marketing support, everything down to that was just the lowest form that you could get. So there was not really a fighting chance to get onto mainstream radio and to really kind of build something. So that's kind of, even if we go back and we look at let's go back to Craig David. Craig David, when he came out and dropped Born to Do It, which did 8 million albums, right? He signed to a large independent. He wasn't with a major at the time. And it was because of the way that they worked, and they worked from the two-step guaranteed and did their whole street campaign. It started to kind of spill over. You know, what I'm trying to say is with the majors, for what we do, it's very difficult to break through the cracks.
Yes.
I think I also think though, I mean, we're going into the subject of not only just genre, but in terms of cultural background of what we deliver. I think for me, on my observations of the industry in the 90s, when I was offered deals, the first thing they would say is, and this is what made me realize, no, I better not go down this road, even regardless. One of my friends, before I actually mention the topic, one of my friends that got signed before me from Brits was Lyndon David Hall. And we would always talk about the time when this would happen. And I remember when he got signed, and it was around that D'Angelo movement era. In fact, maybe just a little bit before. And it kind of went like this, but then it kind of, we got something, and then all of a sudden it kind of phased out from my observation. I don't know any inside information. But what I did observe is when I went into record companies, the thing they would say is, we want to make you into the UK version of D'Angelo. Does that make sense? So they weren't looking for you to have your own identity. They were looking for you to be the UK answer to what's happening in the US, because they were concentrating on these US imports. That was flooding our markets. Remember, we don't have the technology we've got now in terms of the freedom and the fluidity. If someone is organized, they can actually control a lot more of their destiny than they can in them times. You're at the mercy of the A&R's Rolodex and the record company, etc., and manufacturing costs and all those kind of things, which kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It influenced the way they decided about you. So when you're with a major label, they were like, the numbers don't add up. If I get this, and I'm going to, for want for a better word, this black artist to do black music in a country, like you were saying, Tony, which the demographics are low. It's like, I was just saying to my kids, everyone remembers the Real McCoy. Real McCoy was a black comedy. Now that comedy, that thing was hilarious. It was cutting edge, and it was way ahead of its time. But the demographics couldn't support the sustainability of that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Desmond was probably even more of a successful program because it kind of went a bit more wider. And I think the reason why it's more popular, because it had relatable characters to the indigenous population of the UK. And that was the white guy friend. And then there's that white girl that was a friend of, and I keep forgetting her name now. But those two were relatable. So it had a little bit more longevity. If you remember, it went on for a while. But with something like where it was characterized around one type of culture, you could probably get away with it now, today, in this day and age. But in those day and ages, the demographics in terms of our culture has become pop culture. And it's different from back in the day. And I think that's what's happened with our industry. Our industry, people like Storms is, going on. I'm so proud because it's like all of the culture there. There was black culture. They're being shown in one instant. Couldn't do that in the 90s. Couldn't do that at all. But now we're at that place where we can. But if we look at the story of the people that are successful, it is because they've created an infrastructure. Tony, you're a person that's creating your infrastructure around your craft. That's why you have more sustainability than a lot of other singers of a similar ilk. Anyone want to add to that stuff?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like one of the things that's relatable about Desmond's as well, is because it was set in a barbershop. And, you know, there's a lot of people that chop and talk loads of stuff, nonsense stuff in a barbershop. If you want to hear like crazy stories, imaginary stories, you know that we saw that scene, that was a staple part of Coming to America, where it's based in the barbershop. So the Desmond's thing works globally, and that's why it got franchised out and did well, because they wanted to keep putting it in, because it was something that a lot of people could relate to. But you know, like what you just said as well is a really, really valid point, and that is the way the industry is now. So when you look at the D'Angelos of this world, and then you've got the record labels over in the UK, they're looking at America going, this guy's doing really well, but he's also doing really well in Europe on shows and on sales. So we need to find our version of that. Now, not knowing the culture or the music, in their minds, they just have to copycat it. And see, and that happens a lot in lots of industries, because they're like, oh, I want the next thing, so we've got to get the next thing and just get a piece of that market. But it wasn't, it's never been sustainable here, because they don't understand the full outset of what the style of the music is. I just thought I heard an alarm go off, sorry. And where the music is on the ground level, they don't understand that aspect. But now let's fast forward. The industry's changed for a lot of reasons. Do you remember we had MTV Select and we had Box TV and a bunch of stuff like that? That's when the game changed a lot of ways, because what happened was, I remember Eminem came out and all the radio stations banned him. But then what happened was people went onto Box and MTV started selecting his videos. And because they saw the amount of sales, pre-sales, he was going in at #1, radio started to then end up playing him. And now people consume differently, so we now stream. So the people like, for instance, the Stormzy's and everything else, you've got a younger generation of A&R guys that are now understanding a bit more of what's going on, even though it's still a tough business here, but there's a lot more things that have changed now. So it's become more global. So a lot of people can listen to all over the world without being listening to a radio station and check it out. And then they're seeing, so now artists, when they're doing their tours, they're looking at, where am I streaming? If I'm in, I'm streaming in that city really well, let's get a show there.
Let's go there.
And they're getting themselves there. So coming back to me, that's what I've had to do. I've put myself on all these different platforms. And while I was within Incognito and all the others, creating my own fan base. So I know by the time I had a record out, I knew what who the promoters were on my team, so we could start reaching and start doing stuff for those regions, radio drops, radio interviews for those regions, to build up my audience so that I could sustain myself for touring.
And I think that's what separates you from a lot of guys, you know. Yes, we know that you got amazing voice and stuff, but I know that there's a thought process behind how to be sustainable. And I think, you know, telling that to this audience out there, the people that are singers that are up and coming, it is now it's all about infrastructure. It's about team. It's about having a team behind you, and it's also acknowledging where your access points is. I'm hearing that you're talking about analytics, knowing, and actually, you know, not just thinking, oh my gosh, I've got, you know, 1,000 likes or 10,000 likes. Why are those likes there, and who are those likes, and who's going to be likely to be a repeat sale? Who's going to be a Raven fan, and who's going to be a one-time purchase? If those things, if we have the savvy just to kind of, you know, to pay attention to the information that's coming back, then maybe the failure points will be less. And I think that's something that, you know, as a younger artist in my 20s, you know, I was a kid with just a dream in my hand and stuff, and the accessibility to knowing all these analytics we didn't have, because we had to have an A&R, we had to have a manager, we had to have a record company, we had to manufacturing cross. You know, I remember the first time when I recorded an album, Gavin, you were witness to this because you was on the album, when we were recording, we had, you know, internet, was YouTube and stuff like that was just coming together. We still didn't understand what this whole internet machine was going on. And the likes of Gavin, myself, recording albums. Gavin, you was recording Faith to Fly, wasn't you? And I was recording Arrivals and Departures. And we were just trying to, like, look, let's see if we can get this thing out. And you know, we was using things like CD Baby, was getting things manufactured, graphics. I mean, it's just a whole shebang. There was the stuff that you just don't have to do today. Not at all. And you know, it was literally a labor of love, pound of flesh projects. And we had to create an infrastructure, and it normally it normally needed like about, I don't know, 10 or 15 people from you know, people working in the studios, people mixing, leveraging it in musicians, asking you could
Yeah.
do this for me and I could do this for you, and then getting some graphic designer which was like a unicorn. It was like he was trying to get a unicorn to do some stuff, you know.
Yeah.
It was just a whole minefield, and we don't have to deal with that anymore. So for us to push all of that way, but then there's no actual record shop to put it into, or we were selling it. Do you know what I'm saying? We was just, you know, so hell bent on just getting it to that place. I've got the CD in my hand. That was our calling card. If I could have that, if I could have the same head I had then in terms of that drive, be here now, God, it'd be a different story, man. It'd be a different story. How did you guys, you know, you must have had like a major push on something where you were ahead of the technology, or the technology, you know, you weren't around, you know, you didn't have that grasp of that technology. How did you navigate yourself with your album or your projects?
For me, one of the things, going back to the early part of our conversation when I said that I wanted to be in the room, was because when I started doing the backing vocal stuff and I started going on tour with all these various artists, my main thing was not just about watching their artistry and their craft, it was the business. Because, you know, it's the music business. And a lot of people, when I always talk to people about this, it sounds like it's one word, but it's not. And the word music is smaller than the word business. And so for me, I wanted to know the machine, what was going on behind. And so when I said I wanted to be in the room, I wanted to be privy to, oh, that's how that's getting done, and so forth. And the artists feel comfortable with me being there and not feel like, oh, you know, he doesn't, you know, should be in the room. So a lot of the times I learned the back end of what was going on. And while I was doing the whether it be Sade or any of the other projects, or even with Incognito, knowing the intricacy of how to keep it going. So that when it came time for me to have the music, I knew that part. I knew how to get that part. I knew how to get the artwork done. I knew how to do, you know, that side of it, all the manufacturing and so forth. It was then about, what is the vehicle? How do I get it to these places? And who do I speak to for distribution? And how do we get it so that it's hitting the right kind of people? And that's when I had to involve other people, like social media people and so forth, to be able to infiltrate and to get into that into that space. And that helped me a great deal. So now I have a greater understanding of how the market works, but also how to be able to reach the people that will definitely be into your music. And it's just a way of getting them to come out and see me live, and recycling the thing and recycling it. So it's on a smaller scale, but at the same time, it's an independent scale where it works. And the beautiful thing about music on the business, most of the people that I know have all worked at major labels. They're now working independently anyway. So now we've got a lot more accessibility to people that were in that field doing, you know, the head of marketing or head of a label, but they've just got their own thing on, and now it's easier to reach them. For it all. So I've just plugged in to those kind of to networks to kind of, you know, to get my thing out.
Amazing.
Beautiful. Anyone else got anything to add to that?
Yeah, you know what's really interesting about what is the fact that going back to your first question about if there were things that we could do all over again. What Tony has just said, if I had access to that sort of thing right at the very beginning, when I recorded Ladies of the Field, the interesting thing is that I had my own little sort of pseudo label, Little Fellow Records, and then Nicky Brown had Future Artists Recordings, FAR, and it was all licensed under Word. And from the point of actually recording the album, I had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with any part of the business whatsoever. Nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean not even the album cover.
Of course.
No.
That was your era, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing whatsoever. I mean, I'm loving what Tony's saying about accessibility and ownership of the whole process and going through all of that. And if there was anything that I could turn back, I would love to have been able to have had some say in all of that. One of the things about things back then is that because you had no control over that, Word Records, who licensed the product, put me put the album in the R&B category. If
Oh,
you've listened to the album, it was nowhere near shape or form R&B, and it killed the album
wow.
immediately.
Wow.
Immediately. You understand what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
you know, if there was anything that we could ever teach people, it's exactly what Tony has just taken us through, those different steps. If I were to ask to give any kind of guidance or to young artists coming up or whatever, I'd have to talk to Gavin. I'd have to talk to Tony. Say, guys, how do we do this? Because even now, at this stage in life, and maybe I'm at the tail end of things now.
35
I
years old.
well, yeah, let's add the other
You're on
25.
your 30s, man. You're on your 30s, man. Come on. You're young, man. Come on.
I'm 50 years old, right? What I'm saying to you is that I feel long in the tooth where those sort of things are concerned. But those who are coming after me have a much, much better chance of being able to utilize all of the systems and controls that's available to them. I take my hat off to you, Tony, and Gavin, your creativity, Clinton, your amazing ability to have your hands in so many different pies. I take my hat off to you guys because you're at a point in your life where you can make it happen. And maybe not on the scale of some other artists and whatever, but you have an element of control that can take it to the next level. I don't know, maybe I can find a YouTube training video that can help me. But yeah, no, I that's where I take my hat off to you guys.
Yeah, the thing is, Paul, although I understand and I agree with the sentiment with your long in the tooth thing, I I um I always say it's never too late. And I always apply the Colonel Sanders theory, philosophy. This guy made KFC in his late age, yeah, in his later age, yeah. We got to understand KFC's a multi-gazillion dollar industry, but this guy came along at a later age when most people would have written him off and said, it's time to hang up and think about retirement. Let's put it into context, Paul. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. You have changed single-handedly when you sang "When the Night." You single-handedly changed the dynamics and the landscape of that song. Why? Because over 2 billion households watched you sing that. Now, if you could put your head in someone with like Tony, yeah, who if in the mindset of Tony, yeah, because I know if Tony was to sing "When the Night," yeah, I know that after 2 billion households would have watched him, I know Tony's gonna know where to put that "When the Night" afterwards. Am I right, Tony? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because what's gonna happen is that he's just gonna have this. Nobody, I don't know anyone that's had that kind of exposure where over 2 billion households are listening. It's only because you can't see what he sees. Now, my thing is, Carlos Santana had he had a career at a later part of his age, and
Yeah.
he blew up. He completely blew up. Now, my thing is that it's only because of the type of vision that you had from your generation. You got to remember, you guys were, as a singer, you weren't allowed to think of the freedom that we were allowed to think of. You know, it's absurd. Someone saying that you don't even have a say about the front cover. Do you get what I'm saying? If someone told us that, we tell them on your bike. Do you get what I'm saying? So I just think that I say to you, think again. Yeah, you just need to have the right cross pollination with someone. You just need to have the right conversation with someone, because it's only a few years ago that this amazing thing happened, that over 2 billion households heard your voice. Tony has not had that exposure. Gavin has not had that exposure. I have not had the exposure. I don't think anyone else has on the planet 2 billion households. So what can you do with that? Well, how could you harness that? Because people are still hearing that.
Sure.
Does anyone
but
understand
there's
that?
also, yeah, sure. I'll give way to the guys in a second. There is also the aspect of the communal setting of that song, and it being the domain of the choir rather than the domain of the individual. So that's where you don't have that sort of freedom to a greater extent to build on that, unless you cut away and really sort of made a drive for it as an individual. A giveaway.
Oh, I totally hear you. I totally hear you. And I'll answer after you guys. I'll answer that, respond to that after Tony or Gavin want to interject.
Yeah, I think what Paula just said in a nutshell is correct. And I think, you know, as much as some people may have not had the foresight about where can this go, hitting 2 billion, there were labels and Kingdom Choir. And, you know, out of that, it's that exposure that another business entity like a record label go, we can do something with that and we can make that work. And so my thing is that I've just learned from a smaller scale of having a platform, and whether that's me doing a big arena tour with Sade or some other stuff I'm doing, but I know that there's a platform there for me to be able to find out who is here and what's going on here. No matter what venue, there's always going to be representative of radio there. So I want to find out who it is, who's the plugger and so forth, get to meet them, chat. And so I know I can communicate with them and say, hey, check this out. And because I come from the same camp, whether it be Incognito or Sade, there's that calling card already, so that they're going to listen to it and not go, you know, this is the guy just giving me his music. So there was already that inroad. And for me, it was just about utilizing my position within those groups and going, there's a place for me to do it, and to really, it's, you know, there's that saying that your net worth is based on and determined on your network. And for me, it's key to be able to talk to people and not just be the artist, but also the business hat of, but who is that person? And the thing for me as well is I make it a habit of, even after shows, speaking to fans, I'll speak to anyone, because you just don't know who you're speaking to.
Right.
And a lot of my networking or business ventures outside of music and within music has come by just me doing what I do and networking. Slightly went a little bit somewhere else, but what I'm saying is what Paul is saying, the fact that he's been able to, with King Quiet, I don't think anyone's going to be able to do that. 2 billion households, because that was then everybody was tuned in. Everyone, there was no one on the streets. Everybody was tuned in. I didn't know what was going to happen. And I saw Paul get up. I was like, what? I didn't know there was going to be a lead. No one knew nothing. So, you know, for me to see that, and I remember because there was tears rolling down my face, because I was like, oh my days. I saw everybody there. And I was like, look at this. They're singing the main song for the thing. So for me, that exposure was huge. It's huge. And I think the exposure that I've had in the industry, in my mind, when I saw that, I saw the performance, but then I saw the business thing going in my head. I was like, wow, that's okay. So that's going to get onto that. That's going to get them that TV show. That's going to get that. And if they got a right good agent, they can make a lot out of this. And that was my main thing. I was wanting to know, like, that's going to blow up. Yeah. You know. Yeah. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Yeah. No, you're good. Tony just answered. What most of what I was going to say anyway. And I think, it's when we have that kind of exposure, it's about how we use it, how we juice it, how we exploit it, how we bring it to the place and bend it into the place that it moves that thing to the next level. You know, Gavin, I used to, you know, I had the privilege of being on Gavin's shows, Chemistry, when Gavin put the Chemistry out. You know, Gavin has always been ahead of the curve. In fact, we had many discussions till late nights, early mornings, talking about how we're going to, you know, bring what we do as a platform, as a movement. You know, that was his thing. He called it, it's not music, it's just not just music, it's a movement. And it required infrastructure, but it also required alliance and allegiances to each other. And I think that where we've been very much, I think we used to have the more networking capabilities that we did in terms of who we know as what we done. We now network outwards, and that's all good too. But I also think that when we you know, I was with Elle said, El Cato, she said to me, look, I need you to come on my stage. And I was like, yeah, no problem, man. And she's like, I want to introduce you to my fans, because then now you're going to announce your next gig. And I was like, look at that, man. I love that kind of, that speak, because it says two things about her. It says, first of all, she ain't afraid. She ain't afraid of the next baddest singer in the room or whatever. Not to say that I'm anyone, but she's not afraid of that. What she's inspired by is that we can all move each other, because when I get to a place, she's going to come to my stage, and then we're going to do the same thing, and everyone pulls each other up, and it's with that kind of mindset, I think, especially with the platforms that we have now, I think, and also in this moment of strange silence, I don't know about you, but it's made me reflect. How are we going to move? How are we going to move? This rug has been taken clean out of our legs.
Yeah.
And in terms of maneuverability, it's almost like we've been disarmed.
Yeah.
How do we navigate ourselves out of this without connecting with people, without having these kind of discussions? It's going to be a strange one. What do you say to that, people? How do we do this in this strange moment of reflection?
I think it's an interesting time, because it is a moment of reflection. And I think what it has done, it has forced us to do things like what we're doing right now.
Sure.
Because months ago, we weren't doing any of this. And I've seen more and more people do stuff online and talk about music and finding ideas and strategies, re-strategizing. For me, this is a re-strategizing moment of like, okay, no one expected this, what's going on right now. And it's hard. Like, all of my tours have been postponed and some cancelled going into 2021. So I have to write off pretty much this year. And it's about, what do I do? So I'm recording some stuff, and I'm, you know, like Facebook just announced, I think 2 days ago, that they're now doing streaming, paid streaming, so that people can tune in and watch your stuff and do that. I'm looking at a few things like that. But this moment is about a moment of how to re-strategize. And in fact, what it is as well is a great networking time of moments like this, where people are coming together and saying, how can we help each other? Because we're all in this same thing now, regardless of your status in the industry. We're in this thing. How do we make this thing work? And how do we turn it around and do it? And, you know, it's our music, whether it's to do with streaming and the platforms for, you know, having the music out there, it's definitely, there's a, put it this way, we're in a better position. If this happened 15 years ago, where we relied on CD physical sales, we will be done. So there is still avenues there. If you look at the e-commerce industry, you look at Amazon having to employ another 100,000 people purely because the intake of orders and people that are now doing all their shopping online than ever before. Streaming, Netflix are uploading more and more content because there's so many more people subscribing and watching. So it's just about retuning ourselves and going, right, there's got to be another avenue where we can do these tiny desktop shows and stuff and get our fan base to kind of pull in that way, in the hope that once this is all over, we can get back and resume business as normal. And if anything, this is a learning experience.
Totally agree. Anyone got anything to add to that?
For me, this is a really wide topic to unpack personally, because I'm a creative. I rarely have the need or the desire to sit in a space where it's not about the creativity.
Sure.
That said, obviously I've had to survive, and I've had to make ends meet, and I've had to make a living. So, you know, it's a given that I understand it's about pounds, shillings, and pence. But at the same time, I work with people who are trying to express something. They're trying to communicate something that hopefully will resonate with a lot of more people, and give them an opportunity to do it, you know, indefinitely, rinse and repeat type situation.
Yeah.
So I've been in that space where I'm just like, well, who am I? And secondly, why should anyone give me the time of day? What is it that I'm bringing to the party that can't be obtained from anybody else? Because obviously, you know, the question is, well, if we've got that, why do we need you? Or why do we need that from you if it's already coming from this? And it's a hard one, because obviously it can be a bit daunting to try to basically map yourself in a similar space to something else that people already know they like, but individual and unique enough to be needed in that same space. And you know, the last part of that puzzle is then, well, do I like you enough to kind of go on a journey with you, or kind of give you a space or an opportunity to exist in my world, whether that's someone in a business situation or a fan who's kind of listening to your stuff and saying, well, do I relate to that? Do I feel that speaks to me? Do I like what's going on creatively? You know, would I share this? I mean, because now we're living in an online world now, so everything is one click away. You know, you just have to press share, type the name in, and you've shown up on someone's radar. So I think that makes the first two questions. I think that makes the first two questions. I think that makes the first two questions all the more important to answer, because when someone's presses share, they're going to have to find something worth, you know, spending the time to engage, jest, and whatnot. So for me, you know, the whole marketing thing, it's kind of like, I feel like I'm just about to step into that space now where I'm like, okay, I've got some songs, I've got a body of work, I've released a track that everyone was really excited about. And we're in now a time where you can't go outside. So you've got nothing better to do than stay at home and be online. You know, people are sharing stuff, people are trying to keep busy. So I feel compelled to kind of like figure this out, but it definitely is a really gray minefield, you know, like, well, what song do you put first? What EP track list, you know, what imagery, what, you know, that whole space is kind of like, yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Very.
Paul?
No, absolutely. I'm listening to what Gavin's saying, and it's just even just what he said is making my mind expand on the use of my time over this period. You know, how am I using that time? Is it profitable for me or for anyone else? You know, and I can imagine, Gavin, as a creative, your mind must be bristling at this point. Amazing. No, it's honestly, it's just, it's certainly, because this whole, even this conversation is an education for me. I'm learning from you guys, and it's good. It's good to be able to talk these things through, so that you can actually see where things can actually go. Because you might even have had ideas and things in your mind, but you never thought about where it could go, or which compartment it could go into. But you guys have really given me a tremendous amount of food for thought today.
I think looking at the younger audience, the audience, and I don't mean in age, but in terms of on their journey where they're just making stuff happen. You know, you've got people that are wanting to perform and stuff, and they're just getting their stuff together. I've got people that are underneath me at the moment. We're just getting our album together, and all of a sudden, we don't know for the next year, but I want this stuff out. We got people that want to perform, and you know, they want to stretch their legs regardless of the scenario. And I've said, look, we've got to think differently. We've got to think in a place where this is not, was it, I've heard, and I know that people have sometimes disproved this thing, that the Chinese translation to crisis is opportunity. Whether it is or not, I actually embrace that meaning. I like it. That I don't believe that there's such thing as a crisis. I believe that there's an opportunity. So where, you know, I've had people saying, look, I can't sing anymore. I can't do any performances. I'm like, well, look, why don't you set up something in your room, put a backing track on in your speakers, do a FaceTime live, yeah, put a PayPal tip, yeah, and people just tip you accordingly. If you're looking to exercise your gift or your skill, and you want to still keep active, you want to do something, listen, people have got to start from humble beginnings, man. This may be your humble beginning that actually people grow a fan base with you. Maybe it's your album, and look, you know, everything's gone south side because you can't get it out now, and you want to mix it, or you're on Logic Pro, or you're on a DAW, and you want to mix the album and say this is the isolation album. People are going to be accepting because this is the time now to release. If your music's good enough, people will listen. Yeah, so this is actually probably the opportune time to say, well, look, let me put that out, put a PayPal tip if you want, or put it for an isolation price of $2.99 for the album, or $3.99 for the album. At least you still are moving in this season rather than standing still. You know, I think it's just, I think personally, I believe for the people that you see this as an opportunity rather than crisis, then the opportunity will present itself. If you see it as a crisis rather than an opportunity, you suffer from that great disease, paralysis by analysis.
Agreed.
Yep. Guys, it has been an absolute pleasure being with you. Such a great time of chatting. I feel like we've been just in a living room, just hanging and just sharing and breaking bread. Guys, look, we've had Paul Lee, we've had Gavin Holligan here, we have Tony Momrelle sitting amongst us, sharing amazing stuff. Listen, if you want to get in touch with these guys, you need to go to, let's start with Gavin Holligan, www.gavinholligan.co.uk. Go to his website. Also, alternatively, you can go to his Instagram. It is just simply Gavin Holligan, again, Holligan. You need to check out Twinkle Twinkle on YouTube. Go to YouTube, go to his YouTube page, and check out this guy. You need to understand what I'm talking about, creative genius. This guy is just a madman, yeah? Go check out Twinkle Twinkle, yeah, and also you need to check out More Than One, the video More Than One. It is a very great timepiece. We're talking about reflective pieces, yeah. Type in Gavin Holligan into YouTube again, and you will see him pop up, and check out More Than One. This guy's an amazing songwriting genius. It has been great to have you in
Yeah, I love
here.
that song, man. And the video, I love that song video, man. More Than One is dope.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Thank you, man.
Yeah, beautiful.
Absolutely timeless. Check out Tony Momrelle. His website is all the W's. Tony Momrelle, MOMRELLE.com. Go and check out his where he's gonna be around, his thoughts, or whatever he's doing in this season. Whatever he's doing is going to be great. Have you got any new releases at the moment, Tony?
Yeah, I'm working on something at the moment to come out in August, and then I'm working on a two-part EP. Yeah, the album is called Best Is Yet to Come, not the current album, but I'm working on a two-part EP, which will be coming out later on towards the end of the year.
You heard it here first, guys. Check out Tony Momrelle. It is true what they say about him. He is a legend. Yeah, so check out his stuff. TonyMomrelle.com. Instagram is simply Tony Momrelle, the singer's singer. And website, please, I don't actually have any details on you. Where can I contact you? Where can people get in contact with you to for bookings or anything? Where would we go to?
All the music at me.com. And my
music
Instagram page is Paul Lee Music.
get in contact with these guys. I'm telling you guys, these people are amazing. It's been amazing to share time with them, and I've got something from this amazing interview. We're going to have in some shows that are coming up. We're going to have some amazing people coming up. Some guests. I'm so gassed that I've got them on. I can't even say their names, but trust me, they will be coming on. And when they come on, you want to stay tuned to this. This is episode 2. Signing out, guys. We're just giving everybody a wave. I say goodbye. Thank you guys for joining, and we'll see you later. Peace.